Bubble tea has long been a part of Asian American youth culture. Today, it is more popular than ever before. Did you see the Google Doodle recently? Most people know that bubble tea came to America from Taiwan, but its origins within Taiwan are infamously murky. In this long delayed video, we're going to talk about bubble tea and where it comes from. But first, I want to remind you about the newsletter. I do try to keep it up to date with new things that I've been hearing, the full write-up for videos you haven't seen before, and so on. The sign-up link is in the video description below. I try to put one out every week, maybe two. All right, back to the show. What is bubble tea? Bubble tea is... okay, is this really actually necessary? Do you really need me to define bubble tea to you? Fine, whatever. In its purest form, bubble tea is made from a combination of black tea, milk, sugar, and tapioca pearls. Stir it together, you then drink it and chew the pearls, and it all tastes nice, okay? The Taiwanese have a name for the pearl's gummy, bouncy chewiness, Q, or QQ. Bubble tea pearls are not the only foods with the Q. Taiwanese can describe sesame donuts, glutinous rice balls, and even fish balls as being Q. On the whole, it is a desired trait in Taiwanese cuisine. Why call it Q? The New York Times suggests that it comes from the Taiwanese Hokkien word kio, meaning wavy, curvy, bendy, which is as good a guess as any. Your standard boba drink just has the pearls, and plenty of people enjoy it that way. But today's drink shops offer many variants and spins on the original formula. There's cheese tea, where the tea is topped with a layer of creamy, cheesy milk foam, quite popular in Hong Kong. Brown sugar milk tea, where you swirl in caramelized brown sugar syrup into the drink. There's a popular store here in Taiwan making this called Tiger Sugar. I saw a huge line for it when I was visiting in the Philippines. Taro milk tea, which blends in taro powder or chunks of taro itself. Taro is a starchy root vegetable often used in Taiwanese cuisine. Taro milk tea has some nice texture to it, and so on. I can go on forever. The tapioca pearls are the eponymous boba, bubbles, or just balls. I will use the various terms interchangeably throughout this video, though I should note that in Taiwan, the word boba is slang for big breasts, coined as such by a savvy tea house owner. I don't recommend saying it out loud there. The primary ingredient in these chewy tapioca pearls is cassava starch, sometimes also known as tapioca flour. It makes up about 74% of the final product, with most of the rest being water. Secondary ingredients include cornstarch. We can also add sweeteners like honey for extra flavor and coloring. Black colored balls have black sugar added to them. The cassava starch for the balls is extracted from the roots of the cassava plant. Cassava, sometimes also referred to as manioc or yucca, is a short, shrubby plant about 1 to 1.5 meters tall. The plant is well known for its sturdiness. It is quite tolerant of drought and can grow in all types of soils. This has made cassava a major crop for hard times, though its lack of protein means that you should not eat it exclusively. You do not have to do much with the plant to get some cassava root, but like with all things in life, you will get much more out of it if you put more into it. The roots are ready for harvesting after about 10 to 12 months. You harvest it by cutting the stem about 40 to 60 centimeters above the ground and then pulling the thing out of the dirt. One plant gives you about 3 to 10 roots. Please do not eat the cassava root right out of the ground, because first, the roots have a lot of dirt and rocks on them. Yuck. And also, the roots have hydrogen cyanide inside them, which makes them only slightly less toxic than Twitter or the YouTube comments section. The minimum lethal dose for humans is about 0.5 to 3.5 milligrams. Poisoning cases after big cassava meals have been reported in the Nigerian press. And even non-lethal doses can result in irreversible spastic paraparesis, otherwise known as the partial paralysis of the legs. There are sweet cassava variants that have been bred to have almost an eighth of the cyanide content, but for the most part, we need to process the raw cassava plant before we can eat it. The plant originates from Latin America. Genetic histories have traced its ancestry to wild populations in the southern border of the Amazon basin. It was probably domesticated there, with no traces of crossbreeding detected. Indigenous populations have been growing and eating it for at least 4,000 years. They were the ones who first discovered how to remove the plant's toxicity and make it edible. The conquistadors and traders of the Old World stumbled across it and recognized it to be a useful food crop. In the 16th century, they took it to Africa, where it grew in popularity throughout the 19th century. Today, Africa grows over half of the world's supply. Nigeria is the world's leading producer with 21% share. From Africa, cassava then made its way to Asia, where it became a cash crop. Farmers discovered that it grew well in southern India, the Philippines, and the island of Java in Indonesia. Roots are highly perishable, and so they are left in the ground until ready. They are sent to the factory about 24 hours after harvest, where we clean off the dirt and rocks on the roots. After that, we peel and slice them into 1 to 2 centimeter chunks. We then use a sawtooth rasper to turn the cassava chunks into a wet and pulpy slurry. This slurry is then fed through a series of filters and extractors to pull out fibrous pulp, sand, and other unclean materials. The goal is to be left with the purest starch possible. Once all that is done, the slurry is now a semi-moist starch cake. We push that through a dewatering filter at high pressure to remove as much water as possible in order to create a dry starch powder. Not all the starch is used for making boba. You can use it to make a wide variety of things, from animal feed to ethanol to organic acids to MSG to alcohol. Did I say alcohol twice? Whoops. But let us go back to producing the pearls. This process is largely automated. First, machines blend and evenly mix together the starch powder and its other ingredients. Next is a step called forming, or rounding. A forming machine rolls the mixed and blended powders into balls. You can also do this by hand too if you wish. After that, many industrial manufacturers run their balls through screens to separate them by size. Certain shops sell drinks with mini pearls, which have their own fandom as well. Then finally, we vacuum seal the cassava starch balls into packages. We prepare the pearls for consumption by soaking and then boiling them in water until the water has largely evaporated. They can be used for about 6 months after their production date. There's a story told at the Kili Bay Bubble Tea Cultural Park. It claims that the Taiwanese prefectural government first produced tapioca pearls in the Qing Dynasty era. To celebrate the birthday of the Empress Dowager Cixi, the government produced traditional Chinese glutinous rice ball desserts but with tapioca flour. The concoction was presented to Cixi, who apparently liked and praised it. I have seen a similar variant of this story which changes the celebratory event from Cixi's birthday to the traditional Chinese Lantern Festival. Seems fairly plausible. However, I would note that populations in Southeast Asia have long been enjoying jelly desserts made from native starches like sago palm. Sago pearls, for instance. These are naturally white jelly treats made from wet sago. They are often colored pink for aesthetic purposes and have a similar taste to tapioca pearls. Well, they both taste like nothing. It seems more plausible to me that Taiwan's tapioca pearls arrived to Taiwan from Southeast Asia as sago pearls, rather than as a variant of Chinese glutinous rice balls. Two researchers at Academia Sinica in their book on the history of Taiwanese cuisine then note that in the 1700s, Taiwanese found it too expensive to import sago for sago pearls. So they switched to using the starch of sweet potatoes, which were first introduced to Taiwan sometime in the 1500s to produce the pearls, adding tapioca starch to keep them from sticking together. These white-colored pearls were larger than today's tapioca pearls, but nevertheless were popular for a long time, often enjoyed in sweet iced water as a traditional dessert. The Taiwanese-Japanese dictionary produced during the Japanese colonial period includes the word fengyuan as powder balls you enjoy for dessert. Then at some point in the 1960s, new variants of sweet potato starch gave their starch balls a cheerier texture and an attractive brownish color, thus eventually coming to the boba that we enjoy today. The Chinese invented tea and have been drinking it for thousands of years. However, they did not invent milk tea as we know it today. Certain nomadic populations, like the Mongols in China's northwest area, did add milk and fat to their tea, but that stuff is salty. The sweet milk tea that we now associate with bubble tea comes from the British, who were the first to popularize the adding of milk and sugar to their breakfast tea. I read that this practice comes in one part from long-standing British traditions centered on dairy products like milk and cheese, and in another part from the shoddiness of British porcelains. Adding boiling tea to such porcelain would cause it to break, so the British added milk to prevent damage to the cup. Not sure how credible that story is. Milk tea quickly became popular across Europe, driving the colonialization of sugarcane areas like the West Indies to fuel it, and from there it entered Taiwan and Hong Kong. It makes up a particularly big part of the Hong Kong cuisine, with the lower classes adopting Hong Kong-style milk tea as a way to emulate the higher classes. So throughout this video, we have traced back the histories of the bubble and the tea. Now it is time for our two protagonists to meet. We got to put the bubbles into the tea. But who first came up with this idea? Two tea houses in Taiwan claim to have been the original inventor of the bubble tea drink. Both of their origin stories have significant inconsistencies. The first and most widely accepted origin story comes out of Chen Sui Tang, a chain of tea houses headquartered in Taichung. The shop's founder, Liu Hanjie, visited Japan where he saw coffee being served cold. He decided that the Taiwanese might like it too. Thus in 1983, he opened up a tea house in Taichung, serving Chinese tea in a similar fashion, cold. This was different from that of traditional Chinese tea houses, which served their tea warm or hot. Anyway, the story goes that one day in the late 1980s, the shop's manager, Lin Xiuhui, then in her 20s, brought some black-colored starch balls, the aforementioned dessert fengyuan, to a boring business meeting. During the meeting, she threw a few balls into her iced Assam tea, a variant of black tea grown in India. The result was quite good, spurring the company to start selling it. It outsold their other iced teas at the time, and the rest is history. The alternate bubble tea creation story comes from Hanlin Tea House in Tainan. Hanlin's founder was Tu Zhonghe. After leaving the Taiwanese army, he became a street painter and sold paintings for a living. So in 1986, he founded Hanlin Tea House, borrowing money from a friend to set up a store. Back then, it was very small, just 18 square meters large, and mostly sold hot pot. But Tu was obsessed with tea, particularly Taiwan's high mountain tea. In 1987, Tu visited the Yamu Liao vegetable market in Tainan. There, he bought pearl sago, the smaller white-colored pearls made from sago starch, from a vendor. Finding them unpleasant by themselves, he mixed these balls into a glass of milk tea on a whim and found the result to look and taste quite good. Thus, he started selling it. The product sold very well, far beyond the pearl sago vendor's ability to supply them, so Tu switched to the black-covered cassava-based tapioca pearls. Hanlin still sells drinks with both the white and black-colored pearls. They call it the Panda Bubble Tea, and it's great. Chen Sui Tang and Hanlin Tea House have long been at odds over who created bubble tea. There are holes in both stories. Hanlin has pointed out before that in Chen Sui Tang's first story, it wasn't the business manager Lin who first threw the balls into the tea at the meeting, but rather founder Liu Hanjie. Second, it's not exactly clear when the famous business meeting exactly happened. CNN says it happened in 1988, but there are other variants of the story citing 1986 or even 1987. Lin, for her part, clarifies that she had been adding dessert fengyuan to iced tea for a long time before that fateful business meeting. She purchased fengyuan in 1984 when she worked as the tea house's procurement manager. In 1985, she started adding fengyuan to her tea for whatever reason and enjoyed it as her secret drink. When she became manager in 1986, she added it to the menu as bubble tea. I personally feel that the meeting probably never actually happened. The concept is not difficult to copy, and thus many copied it. Liu Hanjie, for his part, decided not to patent it, feeling that it would be better if everyone promoted the drink together. Lin further points out that Liu and Hanlin founder Tu were friends. As I mentioned, Hanlin started off as a hot pot shop. Shortly after bubble tea's introduction, Liu invited Tu over to Taichung to try out this new drink. You get what she is implying. Anyway, the two companies actually battled it out in the courts over who deserves credit for the drink, presenting various legal or historical documents to support their side of the case. The legal back and forth lasted for years. Finally, the Taiwan courts ruled that bubble tea is a product that cannot be patented, since anyone can make or store it. Therefore, its true inventor is not worth arguing about. In other words, they said to get over it. Chen Sui-tang and founder Liu Han-jie have long since moved on. Hanlin Tea House, for their part, agrees that the true inventor does not matter. Both companies continue to market themselves as the inventor of bubble tea. Tu Zhenghe recently passed away in 2022 due to COVID complications. Rest in peace to a legend. I have to note that most local Taiwanese do not go to either Chen Sui-tang or Hanlin for their daily bubble tea fix. These tea houses are higher-end premium locales for drinking and dining, also big tourist traps. Bubble tea quickly spread out of Taiwan. Taiwanese immigrants then brought it to the United States and Canada, featuring it in their tea houses and restaurants. The first mention of it I can dig up in American newspapers was October 1996, calling bubble iced tea a frosty thirst quencher. In 1999, a Vancouver paper quotes an anonymous Taiwanese Canadian who says she first came across bubble tea 3 to 4 years ago back in Taipei. It was then a popular drink for teenagers. Shortly thereafter, in 2000, media mentions of the drink, and people's craze for it, rapidly began increasing. These bubble teas had the tapioca pearls, freshly brewed Assam or black tea, as well as some fruit juice. I don't think this variant gained a lot of traction at first. Up until 2005, the most common boba shop was probably either Quickly's or Lollycup, which prepared their teas using flavored powders. But since then, you've had additional store brands like Gong Cha and Boba Guys. Many of these shops are founded by Americans rather than immigrants and use other types of ingredients. Some of these larger chains like Share Tea, my mom's favorite, and Kung Fu Tea are far larger in the United States than in Taiwan. Kung Fu Tea has over 250 locations, and I've only seen one in Taipei. Bubble tea is one of Taiwan's most significant food exports. Bloomberg recently did a fantastic article on the bubble tea trend. In it, they mention one of the biggest companies producing the bubbles, Shangdao Food. They have an English-language subsidiary called Kilibei. Founded in 1979 by Chen Jia-sun, the company started out as a coffee importer. Over time, they latched onto the bubble tea trend and have factories in both Taiwan and mainland China. They not only provide the raw goods, but also offer a complete business model delivery, as in they will teach you how to run a bubble tea shop of your own. I'm told that they provide a majority of the starch balls for the American bubble tea industry. I haven't quite found any information to confirm that, but they do seem to be a very significant supplier. Their reported daily average tapioca pearl production is 300 tons each day. This video has gotten long. You can drink a whole lot of bubble teas throughout the whole thing. To conclude, the concept of bubble tea is quite simple, but its ingredients have a long history. The whole thing is a fascinating mix of Western, Southeast Asian, and Chinese cultures. They all had to come together in a single place in order to make magic happen. And it is indeed magic. Now, I'm gonna go get a boba. Alright everyone, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, sign up for the newsletter, and I'll see you guys next time.